If someone had asked me 2 years ago if I was happy, I would have smiled and said yes. Not because it was true, but because it was easier than explaining the quiet erosion that had slowly hollowed out my marriage. Happiness, like love, had become something I remembered rather than experienced. My name is Maya, and I've been married to Daniel for 6 years. When we first met, he was magnetic, confident, ambitious, the kind of man who filled a room without trying. I was drawn to his decisiveness, the way he made plans and followed through. It made me feel safe. But what felt like strength in the beginning slowly calcified into emotional distance. Daniel works in corporate finance, long hours, endless business trips, and a phone that never stops buzzing. Our home, a pristine 2-story house in a quiet Connecticut suburb, is a shell of perfection. Polished, organized, and hollow. At 38, I wake up each day with a nagging sense that I'm fading. I used to teach art at a local community center, but when Daniel's job relocated us, I left that behind. The move was supposed to be temporary just until we settled. But temporary turned into years, and now my world is measured by grocery lists and laundry cycles. Our marriage is civil. We don't fight. We barely talk. Most evenings, Daniel sits at the kitchen table with his laptop while I watch reruns of cooking shows in the living room. Sometimes he asks if I need anything before bed. Sometimes he forgets I'm even there. And then there's Ethan, Daniel's son from his first marriage. Ethan is 20 and in his second year of college. He stays with us on breaks and alternate weekends. He's polite, reserved, always has been, but lately, I've felt something unspoken between us. A tension, or maybe a growing awareness. He watches me in that quiet, unreadable way some young men do when they're trying to figure out what doesn't fit. I try to be the cool stepmom. I cook his favorite meals, ask about classes, laugh at his dry jokes. But there's a distance between us, one I've never quite been able to close. Maybe it's the years I didn't know him, or maybe it's because he sees what's missing in our house and doesn't know how to talk about it either. One Tuesday morning, after another restless night beside a husband who rolled away from me in his sleep, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. My skin looked tired, my eyes distant. I used to paint, dance, sing in the car. Now I moved through each day like a ghost in a life that didn't feel like mine.
So I joined a gym.
It felt silly at first, a half-hearted attempt at reclaiming control. But walking into that place, surrounded by movement, sweat, and determination, sparked something. It wasn't about weight or looks. It was about remembering what it felt like to be alive. That's where I met Liam. He was a personal trainer, 5 years younger than me, with the kind of effortless charm that draws people in without making them uncomfortable. He didn't flirt, not at first. He was simply present. When I spoke, he listened. When I struggled with a machine, he guided me without judgment. He remembered things, my name, my favorite post-workout smoothie, the way my right shoulder always tensed after certain exercises. It was harmless. At least, that's what I told myself. We began chatting before and after sessions. Nothing inappropriate, just light conversation. But I started dressing a little nicer for the gym, wearing mascara again, checking my phone more often in case he texted me about scheduling.
I didn't tell Daniel.
One evening, as I cooked dinner, Daniel came home and gave me a peck on the cheek without looking up from his phone. "Ethan's coming this weekend," he muttered, already heading upstairs. "I'll be in meetings most of Saturday." I nodded, my hands trembling slightly as I diced onions. That's when it struck me. I couldn't remember the last time he had kissed me like he meant it. Not just a gesture of routine, but a kiss with intention, with warmth. That night, I dreamt about Liam. Nothing overt. We were simply sitting on a park bench, laughing. His hand brushed mine, and I woke up with tears in my eyes. Friday came. Ethan arrived with his usual quiet presence, dropping his bag by the stairs and giving me a polite, "Hey, Maya." He looked older than he had just weeks ago, taller, more grounded, more observant. At dinner, he asked if Daniel would be around much over the weekend. I glanced at Daniel, who didn't look up from his laptop. "Work stuff," I offered. Ethan nodded but held my gaze a beat too long. Something about the way he looked at me, searching, almost curious, made my stomach twist. I told myself I was imagining things. After they both went to bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table, scrolling through my phone. A message from Liam lit up the screen. "You're amazing. Just thought you should hear it." My thumb hovered over the screen. My heart thudded. I didn't reply. The next morning, I found myself standing in front of my closet longer than necessary. I chose jeans that hugged my hips, a fitted top, light perfume. As I passed the hallway mirror, I paused. The woman staring back looked different. Not quite confident, but not invisible either. Ethan was in the kitchen when I came down, pouring cereal. His eyes flicked up and then quickly away. "I'm heading out for a bit," I said, grabbing my keys. He didn't ask where. In the car, I drove past the gym, but didn't stop. I circled the block, heart racing, thoughts jumbled. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just getting space, breathing. When I returned an hour later, Ethan was gone. A note on the counter read, "Out with friends. Back late." I stared at the note for a long time. The house felt too quiet, too still, like it was holding its breath. Later that night, as I stood by the window watching the wind sway the trees, I felt something shift inside me. A longing that was no longer abstract. It had a name, a face, and it was growing harder to ignore. I used to believe there was a clear line between fantasy and reality, a boundary I could toe without ever stepping over. But lines blur when you're starved for something as essential as attention, and even the smallest gestures begin to feel like oxygen in a vacuum. The message Liam sent that night kept echoing in my mind. "You're amazing. Just thought you should hear it." It was nothing really, just a sentence. But it stayed with me longer than anything Daniel had said in months. The next time I went to the gym, Liam greeted me with a slow smile. He was wearing a navy blue hoodie, sleeves pushed up to his forearms, his hair damp from a workout. I felt myself straighten, brush a loose strand of hair from my cheek, pretend I hadn't been waiting for that look. "You okay?" he asked, offering me a bottle of water. I nodded, smiling too easily. "Just tired. Then we'll take it slow today." That afternoon, we did more talking than training. He asked questions, real ones, about my life, my passions, the art I used to make. No one had asked me about that in years. I told him about the oil paintings that now gathered dust in the attic, about the pieces I used to sell at local fairs. His interest was genuine, undistracted. "Why'd you stop?" he asked. I shrugged. "Life gets in the way."
People stop seeing you.
Liam's gaze held mine. "I see you." That was the first time he touched me. Just his fingers brushing mine as he handed me a towel, but it was deliberate. It lingered. My pulse stuttered in response. I didn't sleep much that night. Daniel was away on business again, and Ethan was in his room with headphones on, the door closed as usual. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Liam's voice, the way he looked at me like I was something worth noticing. It was 2 weeks before anything more happened. I told myself I could stop at any time, that it was just a harmless friendship, that I had control. But control is an illusion when you're drowning, and someone finally offers a hand. One rainy Thursday, after a morning workout, Liam offered to drive me home. "Storm's coming in hard," he said. "No sense walking to your car soaked." In the car, the silence was heavy, pulsing with all the unsaid things. At a red light, he glanced at me, then reached over and brushed a raindrop from my cheek. I turned toward him. Why, I don't know, and suddenly we were kissing. It wasn't explosive or wild. It was slow, tender, and terrifying. I pulled away, breathless. "This is a mistake," I whispered. He leaned back, eyes dark. "Tell me to stop, Maya. If you don't want this, say it." But I didn't. I couldn't. That night, I showered for 40 minutes, scrubbing myself raw, as if I could wash away the guilt. Ethan passed me in the hallway and gave me a curious look. I forced a smile, but his brow furrowed. He was noticing things. Over the next month, the affair escalated quietly, like a storm building offshore. Liam and I were cautious, meeting at a nearby hotel during the day or when I was sure no one would be home. I started wearing perfume again, buying new lingerie, I even laughed, real laughter that filled rooms and made me forget, briefly, that I was betraying a man who still left the porch light on for me. Liam made me feel alive,
Desired. Seen.
but something shifted at home. Ethan was home for spring break, and the house suddenly felt smaller. His presence was different, more aware. He watched me like someone trying to solve a puzzle. One evening, while cleaning up dinner, I caught him glancing at my phone screen as a message from Liam lit up. "Can't stop thinking about you." I locked it quickly, my hands trembling. "You've got a new friend?" he asked, voice casual but tight. "Just someone from the gym," I said too quickly. He nodded but didn't look convinced. I didn't sleep at all that night. The tension grew thicker by the day. I tried to avoid Liam, but he noticed the distance and pushed back. "Are you ashamed of me?" he asked after I canceled 2 meetings in a row. "No," I whispered. "I'm ashamed of myself." But despite the guilt, the pull was stronger. The loneliness, louder. The moment everything changed came on a warm Saturday afternoon. Daniel was in Boston for a client dinner. Ethan had told me he was heading out with friends. I waited an hour after he left, then texted Liam, "Come over." It felt reckless, but the isolation had become unbearable. I needed to be touched, to feel something, anything real. He arrived in 20 minutes. We didn't speak much. He kissed me the moment he stepped inside, hands tangled in my hair, our bodies already impatient. We didn't make it to the bedroom. The living room floor, bathed in golden sunlight, became our altar of poor decisions. I should have double-checked the locks. Should have waited longer. Should have listened to the part of me that screamed this was the wrong place, the wrong time. But I didn't. And then the front door opened. It wasn't dramatic. Just the soft creak of hinges and the muffled thud of sneakers on hardwood. I froze. Liam froze. Ethan stood in the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder, keys in hand. He stopped mid-step, eyes widening, mouth slightly open.
For a second, he didn't speak.
He didn't have to. His face said everything. Horror.
Confusion.
Disgust. "Maya?" His voice was quiet.
Cracked.
Liam scrambled, grabbing his shirt, his shoes, anything. He bolted out the back door like a teenager escaping a parent's wrath. I pulled a blanket around myself, shaking, heart pounding like it would tear through my chest. "Ethan, wait." I started, but he was already turning away. "No," he said sharply, backing toward the door. "Don't." Then he was gone. Just like that, everything shattered. There's a sound a heart makes when it breaks. Not literal, but real enough. For me, it was the echo of the door slamming after Ethan left. The quiet after. The dreadful stillness of a home no longer just quiet, but emptied of innocence. I sat on the living room floor, the blanket clutched tightly around me, knees drawn to my chest. The scent of Liam still lingered on my skin. My mind raced, trying to construct an excuse, a justification, anything that would make sense of what just happened. But there was no version of this that could be fixed. I hadn't just betrayed my husband. I had betrayed Ethan, a boy who trusted me, a young man who watched his parents' marriage fall apart and still gave me the benefit of the doubt when I entered his life. I had been a constant in his fractured world. And now, I was the reason another fracture formed. Daniel came home Sunday night. He kissed my cheek absent-mindedly and went upstairs to unpack. I watched him go, wondering what he would say if I told him, if I should confess before Ethan did. But I couldn't. Not yet. Cowardice wrapped itself around my spine like a vice. Ethan didn't return that night. Or the next. I texted him.
Called.
Left voicemails that became increasingly desperate. Apologies poured out of me in whispers he never heard. My words were met with silence. I told Daniel Ethan must have decided to stay at a friend's longer. He didn't question it, just nodded, distracted by his own life, his own routines. But I felt like I was rotting from the inside out. Liam tried to reach out once. A short text. "I'm sorry. Tell me how to help." I deleted it without replying. The affair, the moments that had once felt electric and intoxicating, now hung around my neck like stones. What I thought was passion had morphed into shame so thick I could barely breathe through it. 3 days later, Ethan returned. He didn't speak when he entered. He brushed past me in the hallway, his face stiff, jaw clenched. The air between us was charged, almost suffocating. I wanted to say something, to beg, explain, grovel, but the words died in my throat. That evening, I found him in the backyard, sitting on the old wooden swing Daniel built years ago. His headphones dangled from his lap. His eyes were red. I stepped outside, my voice barely audible. "Ethan, please."
He didn't look at me.
"How long?" he asked. The question was a blade, clean and precise. I hesitated. "A few weeks." He laughed bitterly.
Wow.
"You didn't waste time, did you?" I winced. "I didn't mean for this to happen." "Of course you did," he snapped, finally facing me. "You invited him here. You made that choice. Don't insult me by pretending you didn't want it." His anger was justified. But what hurt the most was the look in his eyes, disappointment. Not just in me, but in who he thought I was. "I never wanted to hurt you," I whispered. "You were supposed to be different," he said. "You were the one stable thing I had left. And now I can't even look at you without seeing that." He walked back inside, leaving me in the cold. Over the next few days, we became ghosts to each other. Ethan avoided me. Daniel remained oblivious. And I lived in the echo of my choices. Then came the day everything truly collapsed. Daniel was shaving in the bathroom when I heard the front door slam. Moments later, his voice thundered from the kitchen.
"Maya."
"Come here." I froze. I walked in slowly, my legs numb. Daniel stood at the counter, his phone in one hand, the other trembling slightly. He didn't speak at first, just turned the screen toward me. A message. One of mine to Liam. One I thought I had deleted. "I can still taste you. When can I see you again?" My stomach turned to ice. Daniel looked at me with hollow eyes. "Is this real?" I couldn't lie. "Not anymore." "Yes." His face went pale.
Who?
I swallowed. "Someone from the gym." He blinked. "Do I know him?" I shook my head. I didn't want to drag Liam into this more than I already had. He sat down heavily at the kitchen table, head in his hands. "Jesus, Maya."
Why?
I couldn't answer. Not in a way that made sense. Loneliness? Neglect? Desperation? All of it sounded pitiful. All of it felt like excuses. Ethan emerged from his room just then. His eyes scanned the room, the tension, the broken look on his father's face. He turned to me. "You told him?" I nodded. Daniel looked between us, confusion knitting his brows.
Wait.
"You knew?" Ethan exhaled sharply. I walked in on them. Daniel stared at me, stunned. He was here? I couldn't meet his eyes. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. Daniel stood, walked past me without another word, and shut himself in the study. Later that night, I heard him on the phone with a lawyer. The next morning, he left for a hotel. Ethan stayed, but we didn't speak. Time passed in still frames, quiet meals, a silent house, memories that clung to the walls like mildew. I quit the gym. Threw out the perfume Liam liked. I deleted every message, every photo. But the guilt remained, etched deep. Ethan eventually moved back to campus early. Before he left, he stood by the door for a long moment, backpack on his shoulders, keys in hand. "I don't hate you," he said, his voice tired. "I wouldn't blame you if you did." He looked at me then, really looked. "I hate what you did, but I know what loneliness feels like." That was the last thing he said before walking out. Sometimes I sit in that same living room, the one bathed in light that now feels too exposing. I stare at the floor and remember the moment everything changed. The affair ended. The marriage ended. Liam faded into the past, a ghost of a chapter one wish I'd never written. But Ethan's face that day, his shock, his heartbreak, that's the moment that haunts me. Because it wasn't just the affair that destroyed my life. It was the look in his eyes. And I'll never forget it.